What up, everyone? We're back at it again. We are taking a look at the next step of the wrapping project that I have. The first step was doing the side reflectors and the rear reflectors. Now I'm taking a look at transitioning everything in the front to black optics. No, I'm not going to wrap the grille. I'm probably not going to wrap the fog lights trim area, but there's this last piece down here that's a trim piece that I want to be able to wrap. So what I ended up doing is I got some VViViD flat black vinyl to be able to put on the front of the car. We're going to experiment with it today to see how the stretch properties are, and also take a look at the best way to be able to cut this down and to trim it up. The last video I did a wet application process. I'm only going to use RapidTac now for being able to do the cleaning portion, but because VViViD has a hex pattern to be able to do the air release technology on it, I think it's better that I don't use the wet application process to be able to put on the vinyl on the front. Plus, it'll allow me to be able to stretch it and be able to manipulate it around some of the more difficult areas like this curve right here. So, step 2, we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it turns out. So as I was doing the cleaning on this front trim piece, started to notice that I may actually have a couple of pretty big problems here with doing a wrap. First and foremost, let me zoom into this. You'll see that there's a bunch of dings and dents in this particular piece here. This is probably from a stone, probably chips from stones and bugs, because this is a plastic piece, so it probably is just able to pick up that. But if you take a look at all of this stuff on the front, when we're laying down the vinyl, I think I can cover maybe some of these with the vinyl. At least the tackiness should kind of make up for some of those. But the big dents like this one, if I kind of go over here, there's another sizable dent there, another dent there, and kind of all the way down there's a bunch of dents. I'm a little concerned about how it's going to look, because this is going to show through. I'm going to see if I can maybe flatten that out somehow, just so I can potentially get some smoothness over it. But this is definitely going to be something that's going to show through when I lay down the vinyl on here. So the first thing you'll see that I'm doing here is I'm trying to get the vinyl piece to tuck up underneath the top of the vinyl. It gives me a good adhesion point to be able to pull and slightly stretch it across the front bumper. This is where I quickly figured out that maybe stretching is going to be not the right option here. I learned in subsequent videos as I was doing the vinyl wrapping that stretching is typically a bad thing, because it's really hard to control the way that the vinyl lays as you're stretching it. Plus it disforms the color a little bit. But what you'll see here is I am using heat to be able to bend around the corner. Had a couple of tries at it, kind of reheated it a few times. The nice part about vinyl is that it returns back to its original shape as it shrinks back down again. So you'll see that over here I'm just stretching, slowly stretching, and then laying it down, slowly stretching and laying it down again to be able to get the vinyl to lay nicely. There's one little bubble piece underneath the fog light that I was able to get with some of my other tooling, as you can see right there as I went underneath the bumper. So it's just a slow, tedious process to be able to go across and lay down the vinyl on this particular trim piece. So as I continue to move to the center of the trim, I am continuing to heat and lay down and apply pressure on the vinyl itself. The reason why is the front trim piece is a continued arch all the way around the vehicle. So even though you'd think that you'd be able to lay the vinyl flat across and have it follow a top edge, that really doesn't work, because it's angled outward and it is also arching around the entire vehicle. So you'll see as I get to the left-hand side of the vehicle here, I am still continuing to take the material, tuck it on the top, and then pull it down to the bottom. The reason why I do that technique of sticking it to the top then pulling it to the bottom is it allows me to get out any of the air bubbles that are in the material itself. So you'll see that as I'm laying it down, you'll see a couple of air bubbles. I pull it back and then I heat it, and then I stretch it across. I noticed at this point I was really needing to, with that last turn, to put in a relief cut at the bottom. So you'll see that I take a knife here and put a relief cut, which really allows me to take the material after I heat it and bend it just a little bit more to be able to get that last turn, which is going to be probably the most stretched point of this final piece. Stretching it backwards, because I started on the right hand side of the vehicle by laying it down in somewhat a relaxed form. So stretching it and making that final stretch, it really required me to be able to put in an additional relief cut to be able to make it around this turn. So you'll see that I spend a considerable amount of time around this particular corner. I'd say this was probably the toughest part of the wrap itself, is getting around this spot. I ended up cutting that relief area several times to be able to get the vinyl to reposition itself around this final bend. Again, the bumper curves, so it's really, really tough to be able to get that vinyl to lay down nicely. And you'll see that I use different tools all the way across to kind of tuck it in and then continue to move around that bumper edge. After I got done laying down the vinyl on the left-hand side of the vehicle, I ended up going across the top of the bumper trim and tucking any excess vinyl back behind that trim piece. What's interesting about this is I tried to do the best that I could of aligning the vinyl to the top of that trim piece, which means that there really wasn't a ton of excess vinyl at the top that I had to cut off. On the bottom, however, is I pulled downwards and there was definitely extra vinyl at the bottom of the piece. What I ended up doing is I used a cutting technique that left about maybe a centimeter of material that I could tuck underneath that trim piece as I was cutting it. So I really used a finger, worked across the bottom edge of the trim piece, and I left about a centimeter that I could tuck up underneath. And then to seal everything, you have to heat the whole vinyl up to, I think it's 98 degrees. So you just go across it very carefully so you don't bubble it or discolor it from overheating it, and heat that piece to activate the glue to get it to stick to the bottom trim piece. Moving on to the final thoughts on the vinyl wrapping process for this front bumper trim. I would say that maybe the first mistake that I made was that I started on a side and didn't start in the center. I think that there would have been less tension on the vinyl wrap itself if I would have started in the center and moved my way to each side. So what I would have to do is cut that vinyl piece and then take off the backing in the middle and be able to start applying it on one side and then switch over to the other side. The stretching that I was doing on it, I don't think is also really great. I did notice that I did get a little bit of discoloration from the stretching process, but overall I think that it turned out quite well. As for the dings in the front piece, you'll see that I did come across a couple of parts of the trim piece that don't look necessarily great when you zoom in on them. But if I zoom out all the way and not knowing that those, I'd say craters, plastic craters are there, there's no way that you would know that it had some imperfections there just because they are small. While I know that they're there, you're not going to be able to see them just walking by the car. So overall, I think that it looks great to matte black that piece out, and I will have additional videos that will dive into other pieces that I did in the same vinyl wrap, the matte black VViViD XPO series. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe below. I'm always interested in hearing your opinions, so drop a comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more tangents on cars, motorcycles, and trucks. Thanks again for watching.